You're listening to The Physician's Mind, raw stories and real talks from people striving for greatness in medicine and in life. This is where ambition meets action and where the relentless come to level up. I'm your host, Curtis Wilkerson. Thank you so much for listening. Let's get right into it. Okay, everybody, welcome back to the Physician's Mind podcast. I am your host, Curtis Wilkerson, and today I'm honored to be speaking with Dr. Nkem Ezeamama. Dr. Ezeamama, how are you doing today?
I'm fine. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here on a beautiful Saturday morning.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. Let's get right into it, miss. What is it that first drew you to medicine, and did your background or upbringing shape that decision in any way?
100%. So my story is kind of interesting, right? I grew up in Nigeria, and I grew up in a Nigerian household that really valued education and service. And that was kind of what drove me to medicine. And I felt like medicine brought a little bit of both, right? It was a noble way that I got to serve, but it also gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of pride. And I wanted to help people at the lowest level sometimes when you meet people, and that's in the emergency department. And so to be able to play a role in being able to shape like the outcome of their healthcare was very important to me, even at such a young age. And so as I grew up and as I continued to understand and learn about medicine, it just felt like the right path for me.
Okay, and can you share with us when you realized that you wanted to create income streams outside of medicine? Was there a catalyst to that?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think there were a few. I remember specifically, I'll give you two examples, and I think they kind of just stemmed, like they built on each other, if that's one way I could explain it. And I remember there was one night I was working and I was leaving a 2 a.m. shift. As I was driving out of the hospital that day, I realized that as hard as it was, I realized that if I stopped working, everything stopped, right? And that was a scary thought. So I came to that realization that like I had no leverage. I only had earned income. And that was kind of one thing. And then around that same time, right? Our practice was changing. We had gotten bought over by a different group, and our jobs were not as secure as I thought they were. They fired physicians, they cut our hours. And so that moment where I realized that like I had no leverage, and then it was also very clear that I could be cut anytime. I realized that I needed to start building wealth outside of medicine. I didn't necessarily know what that looked like, but that was the fire that started this whole process, and I'm forever grateful for it.
All right. Yeah. And you have quite the impressive background now. So can you tell us how you went from full-time ER doc to seasoned real estate investor?
So I want like people who are here listening, I started as a passive investor. As soon as I started realizing that I couldn't hold on to this field that I loved so much, and I needed to figure out how to get leverage, right? I started investing just as a passive investor. That meant that I took my hard-earned cash or income, and I put it into something that I thought, I had vetted, I had learned, and I said, while I work in the ER, I want my money to also work for me. And so that's how I started investing in apartment complexes. But I didn't only do that, right? I read books. Like in the last 4 years, I've probably read more books than I read when I was in medical school and college combined. But that's how important this was, right? So I read books. I joined webinars. I went to conferences. I asked a ton of questions. And after all of that, right, I did that simultaneously as I invested in my first multifamily syndication. So my first apartment passive income acquisition. And when I started doing that, right, that experience is what built confidence over time. And I was able to see that I wanted to bring this experience to not just only me, but to my community. And so that's when my role started shifting from more of a passive investor to an active investor, where then I can now bring other investors and then we can now acquire these deals together. So that's kind of what it looked like.
Awesome. Awesome. And a lot of people, they say that medicine and real estate investing are entirely different fields. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree? And if so, if you agree, how did you bridge that gap?
I disagree. Well, okay. I don't completely disagree, but I think that there's synergy in both of them, right? I think that in medicine and maybe in real estate as well, you make decisions with very limited information. So you don't have a lot of information, but you make decisions knowing that like this is the best decision you can make and you manage your risk, right? And especially in the emergency department and especially in investing and, like, and just taking risks. So you have to manage the risk with what you know, with the information that you have. And then also a lot of it is like leading teams, right? So in the ER as a physician, I'm the lead there. And that's the same thing in Pheenyx. I'm the lead. And so for me, mentally, I also gave myself permission that as I branched, as I pivoted into real estate investing and building the firm, right, that like I could be a beginner again and I could continue to learn. And so like my goal was to find mentors. My goal was to find accountability partners. My goal was to stay committed to learning because I think that those things were really important to helping me pivot, even in two completely different worlds that I thought was somewhat similar.
So you're the CEO of Phoenix Capital. Can you tell us when that idea came to mind, how you implemented it, what the journey has been so far, and what you want for it in the future?
There's a lot of questions. I'll break it down. So I started, like I said, I started as a passive investor, right? And when I realized that I could build wealth outside of my 9 to 5, when I realized that the money sitting in my bank account wasn't doing me any good, I knew that I needed to start investing, right? But what I also knew was that the people in my community, the people in the hospital, healthcare professionals, people that look like me, we didn't know that these opportunities existed, right? We didn't have access necessarily. And so that became my goal as I built Pheenyx Capital. It was, how can I start educating my community? How can I start educating the people that matter the most to me, right? My investors. How can I start telling them that like these opportunities are there and we need a seat at the table to be able to acquire these deals and to be able to bring it back and help us grow wealth, right? And grow wealth passively because a lot of the people that I know still love what they do, right? We get to make a difference. Like we get to really impact lives. So how do you get to do that, but then use that as your foundation to build wealth, to grow passive income, as you're doing that? So like the biggest thing I think for me was diversification. So what are you invested in? How are you growing wealth outside of your 9 to 5? Are you invested in real estate? Are you doing other things? Are you doing other alternative assets? Are you doing stocks? So my goal was, to educate my investors and to educate my community that you can do what you love, but use that as a foundation to continue to build wealth. That is why Pheenyx Capital was built. And that is truly the essence of what we want to accomplish and what we want to do and how we want to grow and how we want to scale. So if I didn't answer all your questions, some of the part that I didn't answer, but that was kind of what stemmed the inception, the growth, and where we're going.
Absolutely. Okay, no, that's incredible. And in fact, that's exactly why I'm happy to have you on this show because we're all about giving successful people a platform to share their experiences and advice for people who
Mhm.
want to optimize lifelong learning, self improvement, and that's in medicine and beyond. And finance is a critical part of that. And
I agree.
starting Phoenix Capital, educating the community, giving them that foundation for what it takes to build wealth is just absolutely incredible. And I'm so glad to have you on to share some more of those insights. So, my next question for you, before we dive into what your portfolio looks like
Okay.
now, can you share with us? Well, by the way, you own over 300 units. We're just going to make that clear first and foremost. Can you share with us some of the early mistakes, some things you learned in the beginning that are valuable for the audience to hear?
Yes. Um, so I think this is an early mistake that I made, and I won't make it again. When I think about kind of foundation, right? In the beginning, I thought that building Phoenix was just about the numbers, right? I got excited. I learned how to underwrite. I took an underwriting class. Give me an Excel spreadsheet and I can knock it out. I can make assumptions. I can tell you why a deal's a good deal and why a deal's a bad deal. All of those were great. But I think I underestimated the power of who. Right. And for me, the who was, who do I partner with? Number one. And number two, who are my investors? I've come to realize and understand that those who's are why I'm here today, right? Those early investors who said, you know what, I'm going to give you a chance. Let's link up together. Let's partner together and let's build wealth together. And those people have been like, they've invested deal after deal after deal after deal. And so I'm so grateful for those who's. And the other who is like who I partner with, right? Who are my partners as we grow wealth, as we scale? Because in this journey of real estate investing, you're not doing it alone. This is not a one man or one woman journey, right? This is like you're doing it as a partner. So in the beginning, I didn't vet my partners as well as I do now. And the reason why that's even more important is because I want to make sure that my investors are in the right deal. And the right deal is really made up of who the right partners are. So that's one big mistake that I made in the beginning was I didn't spend time, energy, effort, resources to make sure that I vetted my partners. Like it is okay as you're thinking about a partner, it is okay to ask them for a background check. It is okay to ask them like whatever it is that you need to make sure that this partnership is solidified, it's fine to ask them for it. And if they don't give it to you, then you should start questioning. You should just at the back of your mind be like, okay, is there a reason why? And also, I want to give you like some freedom that sometimes we are people and sometimes things don't work out and that is okay. But if you put in the work to find the right who, that will take you so far in the long run.
Incredible. Yeah. Principle of who are your investors, who are your partners, and interesting lesson there. Valuable to hear that because it is so important to properly vet your partners
Yeah.
and surround yourself with people who strive for excellence. I mean,
Yeah.
because you become who you surround yourself by, as you know.
100%.
So now, Dr. Ezeamama, you own over 300 units. How do you manage your time between being a physician, an investor, and a mentor?
Okay, so I struggled with this. I don't want to sit here and tell you that like I'm doing this perfectly because that would be inaccurate, that would be untrue. But what I've learned to do is really, I have learned to have clarity on what's important and I have learned to delegate. I have learned very quickly that I can't do everything by myself. And so one of the things that I did very early on is to build teams. I only need to stay in my zone of genius. So the thing that I do well and every other thing, I need to delegate it. I need to give it to a team member who that is their area of genius and they can go and do that well. And the second I understood that, so when I built Pheenyx, even when we didn't have any revenue, I hired my first virtual assistant and and then I started building from there. And as we started making revenue, I realized that you will go as far as like your team will take you. So I invested in building a solid team. I invested in teaching them and educating them and giving them the tips, the tools, the systems that they needed to grow because their growth really would benefit and would elevate the growth of Pheenyx. So that's what I did to be able to kind of delegate because I think that was very important for me. And then I really spent time in deep work. So I set aside time every single day to get the most important things done to move me forward personally, to move Pheenyx forward professionally, and planning. Planning was such a big part of figuring out how to manage my time. So I'm a big fan of journaling. I'm a big fan of goal setting, and to review them, not just write them in January 1st or December 31st, whatever it is you do, and kind of just ignore them. But it is coming back to them weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, and to see what did I plan? How have I accomplished it? And when you review it frequently, you are able to course correct very easy. So that's some of the ways that I really use to protect my time, to use my time. But it went from just being me and figuring it out by myself to really building teams and then getting clarity around that.
Yeah. I mean, Henry Ford, I think, was the one that said, why would I spend time doing something when I can hire someone else to do it for me? It's brilliant because when you are the head honcho, you've got to be able to do the most important things and
Yep.
all else can be delegated. So setting
Yep.
clear priorities, establishing solid delegation of tasks, building strong teams. I mean, you mentioned you started even from the get-go, getting a virtual assistant and then expanding from there. spending some valuable time in deep work. Love that book by Cal Newport, Deep
Yeah.
Work. What does he say? It's like deep work is the key to success
Yep.
because it's valuable, it's rare, it's meaningful, etc. It's an awesome book. I'd recommend it to anybody.
I
And
agree.
journaling, reflecting, setting goals, fantastic. So, can you tell us what your current roles look like in the investment space? Have you transitioned fully to active investing, or do you still involve yourself in some passive partnerships? What does it look like for you?
Good question. So I would say that it's both. So I'm primarily active now, and that's, and that looks like leading acquisition, investor relations, and strategy in Pheenyx. But I still invest passively. And the reason why is because I told my investors, no matter what, I will invest alongside you so that we have, so that that I have skin in the game, right? I'm in this, we're doing this together. And it keeps me grounded. And it reminds me, it reminds me of what my investors need from me because I'm a passive investor as well. So as much as I'm on the active side, which is what I'm doing to build Pheenyx, I'm very much a passive investor. And so that my investors know that, like I said, I'm in this, I have skin in the game, we're building wealth together. Like I'm on the sideline. I'm not on the sidelines, but I'm in this race with you. That's what it looks like.
Gotcha. And I know you just touched on this with our previous question, but could you share some mental frameworks or habits that have led to your success thus far?
Okay. Um, I will say, you're right. We did touch on it. I journal every day. I think it's important, and it's not necessarily dear diary, but it's to kind of review where I am, what my goals are, to kind of just put pen to paper and think about big picture, where I want to go, and reflect, right? Because that's a big part of growth is reflection. How do you get better? It's by looking at the past and figuring out what went wrong, what went right. How do you make it better? So that's something that I do very religiously. I said I time block. And the reason that I think time blocking is very important for me is because it's a set time that I get to focus on my $1 million task. I don't need to do the $1 task anymore. But
Hmm.
in that time block, right, I'm knocking out the big things. That could be talking to investors. That could be creating our next book. That could be, whatever it is, that could be strategy. And even in that time block, right, I prioritize creativity. So how do I need to move us forward? What are the things that I need to do in order for us, like I said, to move us forward, to grow, to take us to the next level? Those things are really, really important as you think about, especially if you're in multiple roles, especially if you're doing multiple things, especially if you're leading teams. I rely very religiously on my calendar. So I make sure that even my time block is in my calendar so that I know this is a time that I need to do this. This is a time that I need to do this. These are the things that I need to do to move us forward. That's what it looks like for me to stay in my zone of genius, to stay focused, to be able to move us to the next level.
Yeah, that's great. And I love the analogy of the $1 million task versus the $1 task. That's a new one. That's good because it's like, what's a $1 task? Scrolling through email, looking at text messages, whatever. $1 million task, writing that book, networking. That's great. I'm going to definitely steal that one from you because that's motivating.
And you don't have to, you can get to the point where you don't necessarily have to go through all your emails. Like you can get someone to do that, right? And you're not, it's inexpensive. It's a lot more inexpensive than you think, right? You just need to put the right balances and boundaries in place. But that's something that you don't have to do it.
Right. That just ties deeper into the delegation. There's
Yeah.
no limit, really. You can truly maximize your time. So, what sort of money mindset did you have to adopt when you transitioned from trading your time for money to creating true long-term wealth?
So for me growing up, right, I had to unlearn the fact that money is a tool, but it's not the goal, right? The end all is not to acquire this large amount of money and put it in the bank and save that, right? That to me has some element of scarcity thinking, right? To save everything, to put it away, to hide it under the bed, uh, because you don't know. But when you start thinking more abundantly in terms of wealth, right? You start learning to invest intentionally. You start learning that in order for the money to grow, the money has to work for you, right? And putting it under your pillow or in a savings account, it's not really doing the best that it could do for you. So that was very important for me. That's something that I had to unlearn and learn. And then one big thing, right, was that I had to embrace this idea that wealth creation is not greedy. Like it's a responsible thing for me to be able to grow wealth and then use that as a foundation to like bring others up, to uplift communities, and just to think about it on a larger scale. And I think that, we think that money is bad, but it's how you think about it. It's the love of money. It's all these things, but like it's responsible to grow wealth because then you can use that capital to change lives. You can use it for philanthropy. You can use it to enhance medicine. You can use it for so many things when you change your mindset of how you're looking at it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Money is a tool. The goal is not to accumulate an arbitrary number of dollars, but rather to utilize it as a vehicle to build wealth, something that works for you, not only to enhance your own life, your own freedom, but like you mentioned, you can be uplifting to those around you, to your community. So there's just numerous benefits when you utilize money properly rather than
Yep.
just letting it sit.
Yep.
Beautiful. So there's a lot of healthcare workers that probably feel stuck, whether it's a
Yeah.
student, whether
Yeah.
it's a resident, or even an attending physician. Maybe they're burdened by debt, or maybe they're just sort of living paycheck to paycheck. How do you advise them to shift their mindset, reclaim agency over their time, and
Mm.
ultimately start building that wealth?
So I this one hits really close to home because I completely understand this. But not only that, like I have lived it and I still see some of my colleagues living it, right? It's this idea that we feel stuck, that this calling that we have loved so much, it really does feel like to some degree and to some extent we're living paycheck to paycheck. And so the first thing I would advise anyone, especially if you're younger, if you're a student or if you're a resident, and I know like you're in the grind, so you don't even have time to think about it, but it happens so fast, right? You go from making no money to making a lot of money and you don't know what to do with it. And so the first thing that I would encourage you to ask yourself is, what do I really want my life to look like? A lot of us never stop to ask that question, right? Because we just go through life. We're like, okay, I went to med school, then residency. Now I need to start working. I need to pay off student debt. Like I need to now accumulate wealth, but nobody teaches us what to do with it, right? And so the first question is, what do I really want my life to look like? And then after that, like you can go after it. You can get educated, you can learn. You don't have to necessarily give all your money to a financial advisor and say, okay, do with it what you want or what you think is best. Like you worked so hard. Like you were driving home at 2 a.m. You worked your butt off to try to get that, to try to make that money. So learn what that looks like, but it starts by asking, like, what does life look like to you? And when you start asking yourself that question, right, you can then have options. You can build options. So freedom is like, I don't take that word lightly, right? Because freedom could be financial freedom for some. It could be time freedom. It could be location freedom. It could be like freedom to build a family and to live this life that you want. It's not necessarily one thing. So when you start by asking yourself, like, what do I want my life to look like? You then can figure that out early on and you can build the things, the tools that you need, the foundations that you need in order to have that freedom that you're looking for. And you can start by, building the wealth and then using that to build and to buy some of those other freedoms back. So that's what, for those who feel stuck, right? I think you just need to go back. You just need to maybe pause and go back to the beginning and ask yourself some of these hard questions and then start to build from there. Some of it has to do with education. So re-educating yourself, the things that we did not learn in med school, right? We learned how to be the best doctor, but we didn't learn what to do with our money. We didn't learn other facets of life that we now need to survive and to thrive. But it is okay to go back and join a webinar. It's okay to pick up a book. It's okay to read. But you will only feel like you can do those things when you give yourself the permission to ask, what do I want my life to look like? How can I start building from there?
Beautiful. Yes, because the world organizes itself around that which we aim at. Hence, the importance of establishing a clear, concise vision for what you
Yes.
want your life to look like. Because once you
Yes.
have that vision set, you'll notice the opportunities begin to pop up.
Yes.
And that concept is exactly what I'm writing about in the book that I'm working on, Smarter and Stronger:
Oh, I love
Scientific and
that.
Philosophical Principles to Maximize Your Potential. Set a clear vision for yourself.
Mhm.
Excellent advice, Doc. So, your mission includes helping physicians create generational wealth. What does generational wealth mean to you personally?
Well, this one's good. I really had to spend some time and ask myself that question and to understand it. And for me personally, right, because this is part of my big picture, this is what I empower physicians to create generational wealth. But for me, just because of where I've come from, right? For me, it means that no one in my lineage will have to start from scratch because of what I'm building today. It means that my children and others in my community, they can dream bigger, they can take more risks, they can live with more purpose, and they don't have to just survive anymore. They get to thrive. And it's because of the work that I'm doing today, right? It's not just for me anymore. Like I said, it's for my children, my children's children, the communities that we're building. It's for our lineage where you don't have to start from scratch anymore. I'm doing the work. We are doing the work so that life could be just a little bit easier for you.
Yeah, I mean, and that's legacy right there. That is legacy. So, what's interesting is that you've been involved in some global health missions. How have those experiences influenced your perspective as both a physician and an entrepreneur? Tell us about those experiences.
I just came back from one last month, and the truth is that it continues to ground me. It's so different when you practice medicine in a very resource limiting environment, right? You realize that you stop taking for granted the things that you have, and it also humbles you and realize this is one of the reasons that I became a doctor, because when you go to a resource limited setting, right? One thing you can do is you can bring Tylenol with you and you can bring medications and you can do the treatment and you can give it to them. But taking it the next step is actually skills transfer. So it's now taking what I have learned in my schooling and in my training in the United States and teach it to someone, to a doctor, to a healthcare professional in a resource limited environment so that then they can figure out a way to get the Tylenol. They can figure out a way to teach. They can figure out a way to train their own people so that when I'm gone, the knowledge is not taken back with me, right? It is passed on to the people, to the professionals there, and so that they can continue to do the work while I'm gone. For me, that's the most important thing. But what I've learned even more than that is that the bigger problem as an entrepreneur now looking in, right? I have now come to understand that I have to help solve the bigger problem. And I think the bigger problem requires systems, it requires leadership, and it requires capital. It's no longer go down there and do the work and then turn around and leave. It's now having conversations with, the private hospitals. It's now having conversations with government, like saying, what systems do we need to have in place? How does leadership look like? What does the structure look like? Where are we getting capital from to continue to pour into these resource limited settings, this resource limited environment? That's what it now looks like for me. But it took a level of growth and understanding and growing as a professional, growing as a physician to be able to see that. So my role now, when I go back to Nigeria, which is one of the places that I go to practice, right? It looks a little different. It looks like more skills transfer. It looks like more partnerships. It looks like more having conversations with high level individuals in the country to figure out how can we build medicine from whatever it is to take it to the next level.
Wow. Yeah, it's incredible to be able to use your knowledge to have such a strong impact. On that note, can you share with us some other ways? You've touched on a couple already, but share with us some ways that building wealth leads not just to personal satisfaction and financial freedom, but how it offers you the opportunity to leave a legacy and impact other people in a meaningful way.
Oh, these questions are. So I think I kind of said it before, and I think bringing it back here makes a lot of sense. And success, again, is not just about accumulation, right? You're just not building and you're just not stacking and stacking and stacking, but it has to become about contribution. That's the one thing that I want you to take away, right? And it's also about, elevating others. Those are some things that you have to think about as you start building. But it's not only one of my mentors told me this, and it's so important, right? You can give people money, or you can teach them and you can mentor them how to make that money for themselves. You can now contribute to philanthropy. You can now contribute to creating opportunities, because we rise by lifting others up, right? So it then doesn't just become about me. It becomes about me and the people around me that I'm lifting up. It becomes more about the opportunities that I'm creating that then causes a ripple effect, because that's when change really happens. I think that's what wealth building can look like, outside of just like actually wealth accumulation. Success is no longer just about me, about accumulation. It's now, what is the ripple effect that that is doing in societies, in contribution? What could that look like?
Yeah, yeah, it's deeply meaningful. Absolutely. So, Dr. Izamama, for the high performer out there, the medical student, the resident, or the early physician, what are some habits, some books, some mental frameworks that you think would be worth sharing with them? Like things that helped you level up the most?
Okay, so I will say, for me, the things that helped me level up the most in the beginning, when I didn't know and I didn't really have, was I relied on books. There's so much that you can learn. There's so much that you can, when you start dreaming, right? And when you start dreaming big, if you don't have any role models, if you don't have any examples, right, you can turn to books and you can learn from other people's examples. You can read books to increase your knowledge and to give you examples of what's possible, even if it only starts in your dreams. So some of the books in the beginning that I read that just kind of helped me lay the foundation was, I read books like The One Thing. What is that one thing that you are going after, that you're doing consistently, that is going to take you to the next level? I read about like the psychology of money. What does that mean as you start growing, as you start building, as you start scaling? And then I also read like The Slight Edge. So what makes you different? How do you stand out? Some of those books are books that I've read. And as I've grown, I've read books like How to Buy Back Your Time. We all have 24 hours in one day, but there are people who like rock at their 24 hours, and you're like, what makes them different? I learned that in books. And so that has been a very big part of, I think, my growth. And I talked about it earlier, right? I'm very big on time blocking. Again, how are you using your time? I also have thrived with getting accountability partners. You now have to get people around you who your dreams and your goals don't scare them, and their dreams and their goals don't scare you, right? These people are thinking big. They're thinking massive. And then they're like, how can we make it happen? Like those are the things that we have to think about. You think about like the Jeff Bezoses who started in their garage and then grew. Like they surrounded themselves around people who were not afraid about with their goals. Like when you're thinking million, billion dollars, when you're thinking about impacting the whole world, the who, again, who you have around you, who you surround yourself with, the people that keep you accountable make all the difference.
Okay, great advice. So, first of all, with the books, it's true. If you may not have those role models to offer you that mentorship, you can find them in books, because books, it's like a accumulation of what someone may have spent a whole lifetime developing that you can
Yes.
absorb in a matter of a month
Yes.
very quickly. Some good recommendations: The One Thing, The Psychology of Money, The Slight Edge. Absolutely. I need to read the other two. I've read Psychology of Money. I'll check out those other two. But then you touched on the point of how important it is to surround yourself with excellence, people who
Yeah.
have goals that don't bring you down, and somebody that supports your goals. Just surrounding yourself with beasts, as I always say. Surround
Yes.
yourself with the beast mode people, and you'll become a beast yourself.
Yep.
It's incredible. Really is. Is there a piece of advice that you wish somebody had given you early on in the journey that could have saved you some time, some money, or some stress?
Oh yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm hungry for knowledge and bits of information that can help me. But Um, a mentor who has now become a friend told me that success doesn't have to be linear, right? You're allowed to pivot. Allowed to start over. And I think the biggest piece of advice I got was that you do not need permission from other people to chase what's calling you. So if you have that goal and that deep desire in your heart, right? You don't need my permission. You just need to be consistent and you just need to take steps every day to get you closer to that thing. That I think is the most important thing that helped me was that because in some instances, right, in the eyes of a lot of people, I was already successful as a physician, but I had this bigger calling in me. And I had to drown out the noise and the voices of other people. And I just had to know that every single day I was taking a small step in the direction of my goal and in the direction of that thing that was calling me. And I had to say no to all the other voices, no to all the other noise, and just keep doing that thing. So if you are sitting and you're thinking there's something in your mind that's calling you, or there's this big goal, or you know you're meant to make a difference, you're supposed to impact the world, just keep taking one step every single day and don't allow those voices to drown you. Don't allow those voices to stop you. You don't need their permission, even if those voices are from people who love you the most. If it is not in line with your goal, if it is not in line with your vision, if it's not in line with your mission or your core values, you don't need their permission.
Everything you've said so far in this interview is just absolutely awesome. You are a huge inspiration.
Thank you.
Don't worry about what other people are saying about you. Pursue your vision.
Yeah.
That's great, great advice. And of course, success does not have to be linear. There will be
No.
setbacks, adversity you have to overcome.
Yes.
Absolutely fantastic
Yeah.
advice. So, Dr. Ezeamama, as we wrap up here, I have one final question for you. The mission of the physician's mind is to give successful people like yourself a platform to share their experiences and advice to help curious minds optimize their journeys of lifelong learning and self-improvement in medicine and beyond. So, as we part ways here, do you have any final pieces of advice that you'd like to share in line with that mission?
I think don't stop is the simple and the easiest thing that I want to tell you, right? You might be in a place that you think that you have accomplished greatness, right? But if there's something in you that is telling you that you're supposed to be bigger, you're supposed to live this more expansive life, this one life that you get to lead, right? Then go for it. Chase your dreams. Don't be afraid. Like I said before, and I'll say it again, right? The opinion of others are none of your business. So that means that if you have something deep in your heart, if you have a goal, if you have a vision, then go after it. Like especially in the emergency department, right? We know the fragility of life. And just in healthcare in general, we know how fragile life is. So if you get this one life to lead, do it boldly, do it courageously, do it with every single ounce of resilience and tenacity that you have, because like you get to write your own story. You get to write the beginning, you get to write the end. So you get to do it exactly how you want. Why not chase that dream? Why not go after that goal? Why not lead? Why not do what you need to do to say at the end of the day, like I lived fully? I think that's what I want to leave them with.
Absolutely phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. You have one life, live it to the maximum extent of your ability. Dr. Nkem Ezeamama, thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for your advice. Where can people reach you if they want to learn more?
Oh, you can reach me. You can find me anywhere online. I'm big on LinkedIn. And so you can always find me on LinkedIn. Just type in my name. I'm right there. But anyways, our website is www.phcinvest.com, one word. And you can email me as well. So any of those places you can find me, but any social media platform on our website, you can always reach out to me.
Excellent. Thank you again.